The Sudirman Cup is one of badminton's biggest events. It was first held in 1989 in Jakarta, Indonesia, and at those championships it was the hosts, Indonesia, who lifted the trophy, defeating Korea in the final. The next two subsequent editions saw Korea and Indonesia battle each other again, although on both occasions it was Korea who won. In 1995 though, things changed. With an incredibly youthful team, China reached their first final and won the title, defeating Indonesia. And ever since then, China have made the competition their own, having never failed to reach the final, an incredible run of 15 consecutive Sudirman Cup finals. And of those 15, only twice were they defeated, both times by Korea in 2003 and 2017. Now, in 2025, we are just a few days away from the 19th edition of the Sudirman Cup, and the big question on everyone's lips is, can anyone stop China from winning again? Or better yet, can anyone stop them from making the final? Well, that question is what I'm going to talk about in this video, as well as talking about the draw, the teams, and answering a few other questions. This is a Beckman's Breakdown special, a preview for the 2025 Sudirman Cup. I think a rather obvious and good place to start this video is by looking at the draws, and for ease I'm going to go through them in order, starting with Group A. In this group are the hosts and defending champions China, and in all honesty I can't see them not advancing through this group in top position. I don't really have too much to say about the China team yet, I'll save that for a little later in the video. Instead I want to focus on the two teams who I think will be fighting for the runner-up spot, Thailand and Hong Kong. Thailand are the higher ranked team and overall do have a stronger team. In the men's singles they have the current world and Asian champion and Olympic silver medalist Ep.13. In the women's singles they have a number of players they could select, Ratchanok-Intanon, Suparnada Katathong and Pompaway Chochawong. All three of these players are around the same current level, but they all do well against different opposition, something which gives Thailand great flexibility. In the women's doubles they have the Imsar sisters, who are a very capable pair. They also have Sapsiree Theratanachai, who might not be near her very best level, but she does bring experience and could easily slot in if required. This goes for the mixed doubles too. In the men's and mixed doubles they have a player similar to Sapsiree, albeit a player who is playing at a much higher current level. That is Sapsiree's former mixed partner, Dichapon Puvaranukroh. Outside of Dichapon they have a number of other talented players in the doubles disciplines, Kedrin and Jomko to name just two. My worries with the Thai team is the fact that Dichapon may have to double up a lot, something which is tough. But then again, Dichapon has proved he's one of the fittest badminton players, so maybe for him this is something that won't affect him too much. At the moment, this Thai team is solid, although I'd say they are slightly lower in level to their Thai teams of old. They have less options in the women's doubles, a slightly weaker mixed pair, and their women's singles, although numerous, I'm not sure is as strong as it was in the past. However, in the group stages, I still think they are more than capable of defeating Hong Kong to progress from the groups. Hong Kong's team is also solid, but it lacks true star power. In the men's singles, they are probably strongest, with players like Liu Chuk-Yu and Karlong Angus, both capable of winning a point against Thailand. But outside of that, it will be tough. They do have Tang Chun Man, an incredibly good mixed player, and someone I reckon they'll double up in their match versus Thailand. But in the mix, his former partner, who he just won the very recent Asia Championships with, Se Ying Sweat, is not a part of the team. With Ying Sweat missing, it massively reduces their chances of beating Thailand and progressing from the group stages. So yeah, it isn't impossible for Hong Kong to spring a surprise, but I find it highly improbable. As a result, for Group A, I think China and Thailand will progress. Moving on to Group B, for me I see two clear teams that will progress here, and those are Korea and Chinese Taipei. Canada and Czechia both have some talented players. Canada has Brian Yang and Michelle Lee in the singles events, and Czechia has Jan Luda, who can have his day. But whilst they have players who could pick up a rubber, maybe two for their teams, in the overall tie, neither of them quite have the depth to cause an upset. What's more interesting for me about this group is the battle for the top spot. Most will think Korea, and personally I have them as my favourites too, but Chinese Taipei are more than capable of winning. I know it's a little while back, but in 2017 when Korea won the whole tournament, they did in fact lose to Chinese Taipei in the group stages, and it's not out of the realms of possibility to happen again in 2025. This year I foresee a split in the singles events, Korea winning the women's and Taipei the men's. In the doubles events, Korea are the favourites in all of them. I'd say the biggest favourites in the women's doubles. Some would argue the same goes for the men too, based on current form, and I'd say that's a fair argument. But still, Chinese Taipei has chances in the men's and certainly has chances in the mixed, especially as it is a little unknown as to who Korea will even field in the mixed doubles. The Taipei squad is filled with players who on their day can beat absolutely anyone, so if they have their day, they could upset Korea. I mean, Chinese Taipei are that kind of team. In the Sudirman Cup and Thomas Cup too, they've always had a team capable of making the medal rounds. They are often the very dangerous underdogs, and in this Sudirman Cup it will be no different. And who's to say they can't do what they did at last year's Thomas Cup and win their first medal? But hey, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. More on that later. As for this group, whilst I do think Taipei are capable, if I had to bet, I think the Koreans' consistency, plus the fact they do pretty much have 2 rubbers guaranteed, means they'll top the group. Moving on to Group C, in my eyes this is the easiest to predict. Japan and Malaysia are coming through this group. But wait a minute, I hear you say, what about France? Europe's number 2 team and a team who should be considered outsiders on a similar, if not slightly lower, level to India or Taipei. Well, yes, that would be true if France had decided to send their strongest team. But they haven't, opting to send pretty much a B squad. They aren't sending Alex Lanier, the Popper brothers, Tom Drukel or Delphine Delroux, or even Anne Tran. It's only in the women's singles where France are sending their top-ranked player, in the form of Léonie Huet. In fact, aside from Anne Tran, who won the European Championships last year, everyone else I listed made the final of the 2025 European Championships. And I haven't even mentioned another men's doubles pair, Eloy Adam and Leo Rossi. They also got to the final of the Europeans and are also not in the French squad. Why they haven't sent these players is because of the tight tournament schedule, and with the priority being on the home World Championships in Paris this summer, they've opted to skip the event to focus on training and preparing their players. Whilst that is a very fair and reasonable reason, it's still a shame because I believe they would have had a chance against Japan and Malaysia. Talking of Japan and Malaysia, they are 2 very strong teams, but 2 teams who will be weakened in this 2025 Sudirman Cup as opposed to their Sudirman Cup teams of the past. Japan's men's strength isn't where it was even 2 years ago, as although it will technically be the same players, their results and recent form aren't quite the same. In their top men's doubles pair, Hoki and Kobayashi, this is in no small part due to them only recently returning to international competition. In the men's singles, they will likely field Kodai Naraoka, as they did in 2023. Kodai is still a strong player, but I feel his level was higher and more consistent in 2023. That year he went on to reach the World Championship final, something I wouldn't bet on him doing this year. Whilst I do think he is still very strong and has improved since 2023, I think his level in comparison to the rest of the men's singles players in the world just isn't as high. On top of this, whilst they do have Midorikawa and Saito in the mixed, a pair who reached the Asia Championship final this year, a result that will give the team some confidence, the level of this pair is still incomparable to that of Yuta Watanabe and Arisa Higashino. For Malaysia, the big blow for them is the absence of Lee Zijia, their top men's singles player. This is due to injury and the fact that he has successfully applied for a protected ranking, meaning he can't compete until around June at the earliest. Malaysia still have a capable filler in Lung Jun Hao, but he isn't as reliable as Lee Zijia, especially in team events. At the 2023 Sudirman Cup, Lee Zijia went undefeated, playing a key role in Malaysia winning the bronze. Outside of this, Malaysia have historically struggled in the women's singles, and whilst Go Jin Wei, their likely pick, would still likely win against a French player, it still opens the door slightly, and when combined with pressure and lower strength in other key matches, can lead to upsets. Whilst these weaknesses in both the Japanese and Malaysian teams won't be exposed by the other 2 teams in their group, it does lead to the interesting question of who will ultimately end up topping Group C. Well, it could be close, and I think the key match will be the women's doubles, with Pearly Tan and Tina Muralidharan for Malaysia, and for Japan it would likely be Matsuyama and Shida, but Japan do have options. I see whatever this match is as 50-50. The reason I think the women's doubles will be key is that I have Japan as favourites in the singles events and Malaysia as favourite in the men's and mixed doubles. When I say favourites outside of the women's singles where I feel the advantage is huge to Japan, the other three are quite close. But the women's doubles, like I said, I think is 50-50 and will be the key match to decide the tie. And if that is the case, I think considering recent form, then I will go with Japan as winning this group. And finally, Group D. Whilst Group C was the easiest to predict, Group D is probably the hardest. It is certainly the winner of the Group of Death title that always gets handed out at events with group stages. And that's because it has three pretty big teams in it. It has the number 2 seeds, Indonesia, Europe's top team, Denmark, and one of the competition's strongest underdogs, India. Oh, and there is England in the group too. But no offence to the England team, whilst I think they can certainly make a match out of things, it's highly unlikely they'll have much influence over the outcome of this group. Now, before I do go any further, I must admit, as I write this, Indonesia have only named 4 players in their squad. So that does make it a little difficult to talk about potential lineups. Whilst I could guess a few, with them recently changing around some mixed and women's doubles pairings, plus I believe Taufik Hidayat mentioning that they wouldn't overlook independent players, I am a little unsure of how their team might look. But regardless, I think from some educated guesses, I can still talk about their team and their chances, and I can of course talk about Denmark and India. I think for all 3 teams, especially Denmark and India, their strength lies far more heavily in the men's events. You only have to look at how these teams perform in the Thomas and Uber Cups to see that's the case. In this regard, Indonesia do have the advantage. Their female players are certainly stronger than the other 2 teams. They were the Uber Cup runners-up last year. However, I wouldn't say they are that much stronger that they can't be beaten, especially as I see it in the women's doubles events. So again, like Japan versus Malaysia in Group C, I can see the women's doubles matches as being quite crucial. But that isn't a discipline which I think could be the most decisive in this group. No, in this group I think it's the mixed doubles. All 3 teams will likely field relatively new pairs that have shown great promise in their beginnings, but all pairs with little or no Sudirman Cup experience as a pair. Denmark have the newly crowned European champions Toft and Magelland. India have Kapila and Crasto, a pair who have had a very solid 2025. And Indonesia, well, like I said earlier, I am unsure. Maybe Dejan and Ramadhanti, but it could be a number of others. But regardless of who they pick, I think all 3 nations here are similar in this discipline. It is a tricky group to predict, because while some players or pairs within all 3 teams have been struggling or not that consistent recently, I know what they are capable of and could very well turn it around at this event. But based on current form and also just having top players in all 5 disciplines, I think Indonesia will come through. As for Denmark and India, that is very tricky. There are a number of question marks in both these teams, as there are for Indonesia too actually. But in both the men's disciplines, the singles and doubles, players and pairs for both Denmark and India have been up and down a bit. In the men's singles, Denmark will be without the 2-time Olympic champion Victor Axelsen as he has undergone back surgery. However, with Anders Andersen actually ranked higher and having had a better 2025 so far, maybe Victor's absence won't be felt as strongly. Although it must be noted that Anders has been plagued with some illnesses and minor injuries recently, so his form for the Sudirman Cup is questionable. On India's side, they have HS Pranoy and Laksha Sen, both very capable players, but both players who have also not had the best of times recently. And in the men's doubles, since becoming the world number 1s, Astrup and Rasmussen have struggled to win any matches, and unfortunately for Denmark, their second pair now has an injury concern, as Fredrik Søgaard had to retire in the semis of the European Championships. For India, they really only have one pair, and they are a great pair, Ranki Reddy and Shetty, but will Shetty be fully fit as he suffered a back injury during the All England? I think the men's matches in mixed doubles will be key, with the men's matches being especially huge, probably more so for Denmark. Factoring in all of this combined with the fact I'm a little more uncertain of Denmark's men's doubles lineup, the fact I think India has the edge in the women's events, and the mix being somewhat 50-50, then I am inclined to favour India as winning this match and joining Indonesia in the knockout stages. So yeah, I'm going with Indonesia and India. It's close, but I'll go with that choice. Okay, so that's the draw and my predictions for them, and I've also touched on some areas of specific teams. Next, I'm going to answer a few bigger questions, and by doing so I'll be able to dive a little deeper into a few of the teams. In the Sudirman Cup's 36-year history, only 8 nations have medalled. Those are China, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, Denmark and England. So, obvious question, can a 9th or possibly even 10th nation be added to that list? For me, as you might be able to work out, there are 2 teams I see as most capable of this. In fact, they've been capable for the past few editions. They are India and Chinese Taipei. Now, of course, a huge factor will be what the knockout draw will look like and where they will be placed. The knockout draw is randomly done, although there will be some fixed positions. The teams who top Group A will be put in the top seed position, and the team who tops Group D will be put in the second seed position at the bottom. The winners of the other 2 groups will avoid both those teams, but could be drawn either in the top or bottom half. All group runner-ups could be placed anywhere, aside from facing a team they played in the group stages. I won't go through all the potential positions on the draw, but of course if Taipei or India can top their respective groups, it would certainly help, as it would likely mean they'd avoid China, the top seeds. Outside of that, if one of them wins their group and the other comes runner-up, it is possible both teams could face each other in the quarters, guaranteeing at least one new nation on the medaling list. But whilst their position in the knockout stages could help their medaling winning chances, instead I want to focus on their teams a little bit, starting with Chinese Taipei. As I've already said, Chinese Taipei has always been a team capable of medaling at the Sudirman Cup. In the past 10 years or so, other than the women's doubles, they've had very strong players in all disciplines. In 2025, what does go against them, other than not having the 2-time Olympic gold pair of Wang Qilin and Li Yang, is that their women's singles is not as strong as it once was. Tai Zhu-Ying's absence leaves a huge hole in the Taipei team and does considerably lower their chances of medaling. I've said this many times before, but if a team wishes to do well in the Sudirman Cup, they do need at least 3 strong disciplines, but realistically they need 4, if not 5. Chinese Taipei used to have 4, but in 2025 I'd say that's now 3. Can they medal? Yes they can, but it will be a huge uphill battle. And for India, I think the story is similar in a number of ways, but also different. For me, India do have a chance of medaling, but what makes me doubt it is that they have just far too many question marks next to key players. Lakshya Sen and HS Pranoy in the men's singles and Ranki Reddy and Shetty in the men's doubles, these 4 were absolutely key in India's historical 2022 Thomas Cup win, and they are 4 players who will be seen as the backbone of India's chances in this Sudirman Cup. But this year, all 4 players have been struggling with form. In the women's singles, they have the legendary PV Sindhu. Sindhu is a hugely decorated player, a former world champion and Olympic silver medalist, but she is now entering the twilight of her career, and when against the top teams, I think she will struggle to deliver points. In the women's doubles and mixed doubles, like I said before, whilst historically India's weakest disciplines, they are disciplines that have been showing promise recently. However, whilst capable, against the big teams, can points be gained, and gained consistently? I'm not so sure. For me, whilst it is still certainly possible, anything kind of is in these sorts of events, I can't see a new team being added to medalists in 2025. Not unless one of them tops the group and the other is runner-up, and they are then drawn against each other in the quarter-finals. Malaysia have medalled at the Sudirman Cup 3 times, all 3 times being bronze. 2009 was their first medal, but their last 2 have come at the last 2 editions, in 2021 and 2023. So the question is, can Malaysia keep this going and win a medal for the 3rd time in a row? Well, again, like all of these questions, there is always a possibility of it happening. However, for Malaysia, I do think it's going to be difficult for them. Let's say that for 1, possibly 2 reasons. The main one is what I said earlier, the absence of Lee Zijia in the men's singles. In 2021 and 2023, Lee Zijia played a pivotal role in them winning the bronze medal, so his missing will leave a big hole. It seems, based on their squad, that the replacement is Leung Junhao, and whilst he is certainly a very capable player, a player who has beaten a few of the very best in the world, I don't think he can deliver as many wins as Lee Zijia. Having a discipline weakened doesn't just have the effect of not giving as many points to a team, but it also exerts more pressure on the rest of the team to deliver, especially the key players. For Malaysia, with their women's singles being a weaker discipline already, this will put a huge amount of pressure on their men's doubles, women's doubles and mixed doubles. It also means there is very little room for mistakes or a bad day. Lee Zijia's absence has, in a way, turned Malaysia from a team with 4 strong disciplines to a team with just 3, and as I always say, 3 is doable, but 4 or 5 is what is generally needed. And if that wasn't already enough, there is a little trouble in the mixed doubles too. Chen Tangji and Toei Wei, the world number 4s, have been struggling recently, with a big reason being differences when on court. Differences which have led the coaches to splitting them up for future tournaments. Now, whilst Malaysia are sending 3 mixed pairs, With one of those being the world number 3s Go Samwat and Siobhan Jamie Lai, I think Malaysia would have loved to have had options in the mixed. Chen and To and Go and Siobhan have different styles and so play better against certain opposition. They still have those options of course, and I am not saying that Chen and To can't bring it out the bag. What I am saying though is that the confidence in those options won't be as high as Malaysia would have liked. So, with everything in mind, while Malaysia will still be a strong team and a difficult team to beat, they aren't in as strong a position as 2 years ago and will rely even more on certain members, something which I think does lessen their chances of medaling. It doesn't eradicate their chances, just lessens. Okay, so this is kind of a flip on the previous question, as whilst Malaysia have medalled at the last 2 Sudirman Cups, Indonesia has failed to do so, even though they are amongst the top 4 seeds both times. So in 2025, can Indonesia get back in the medals? Well, before they can think about the medals, they do have to get through a rather tricky group with India, Denmark and England. I do think they will come through that group, as I just feel they have more of the disciplines covered, and on top of this, India and Denmark's strongest disciplines have shown a little bit of fragility recently. I also think the top in the group will be quite key for Indonesia. If they do, it will mean they will not only get the second seed spot, the opposite half to China, but they should get a more favourable draw too. This is what they were unable to do in 2023, losing to Thailand in the group and then drawing China in the quarters. For me, as I mentioned earlier, it is a little difficult to talk fully about Indonesia because they haven't released their full squad, or not that I could find. Whilst I can take a good guess at the majority of their team, I am a little unsure of who they will take for their women's doubles and mixed doubles. But regardless, I do feel Indonesia are in a similar position to how they were in 2023 in terms of their team. Their men's doubles pairs are strong and solid and have shown some good recent form. Their men's singles takes a small hit as Anthony Ginting is injured, leaving it all on Jonathan Christie's shoulders. And that's something I do think Jonathan is capable of taking. Whilst Jonathan hasn't played brilliant in his past 2 tournaments, his 2025 has still seen some good performances too. Women's singles will be led by Tunjung, and while she also hasn't had a great 2025 so far, I still think she's a stronger player now than she was back in 2023. What also helps is that Indonesia have a few other women's singles players such as Wadani, who have shown they can compete at the highest level, so could sub in if needed. And for the women's and mixed, whilst I'm unsure of who they will play, more so than mixed doubles, again it is similar to 2 years ago, where Indonesia fielded a different mixed pair in every match they played. So yeah, can Indonesia get back amongst the medals? You know my answer. Yes. But it won't be straightforward, and I feel the things that let them down 2 years ago could be the same things that let them down again in 2025. Can Japan become the world's best team? The reason I pose this question in relation to the Japanese team is because not only have Japan medalled at the last 5 Sudirman Cups, but they've been in 3 finals, always falling short to China. My answer to this question is that whilst I will never rule anything out, Japan winning is the one I feel is the least likely. In fact, I think Japan could struggle to even medal this year. I say that because what made Japan so strong in the past, years where they reached the final, or even 2 years ago where they were agonisingly close to beating China in the semis, was that they did have all 5 disciplines strongly covered. In 2025, whilst the team is pretty close to that of 2 years ago, so on paper all 5 disciplines are strongly covered, if you look a little deeper there are weaknesses. Men's singles, Koda Naroka, strong player, he's a world finalist, but his 2025 hasn't been great. Back in 2023, following that Sudirman Cup, he went on to reach that world final. In 2025, I can't see him repeating the same feat. It's not that I don't think he is any good, but his level in relation to everyone else is lower. Men's doubles, Hoki and Kobayashi, fantastic pair, former world champions. With them only just returning to international competition, their form is uncertain, shown by their performance at the Age Championships. To add to this, in 2023, Japan had the backup men's doubles combination of Koga and Saito, an established pair. In 2025, it looks like that pair could be Midorikawa and Yamashita, a good pair, but not quite as established as Koga and Saito. And on top of this, using them throws up an issue for me, as Midorikawa will likely be the top pick for the mixed doubles, so it means he would have to double up. In the women's singles, Akane Yamaguchi just simply isn't the same player at the moment as she was in 2023. Japan does have the young and upcoming Tomoka Miyazaki, but her lack of experience in these huge events might prove costly. Women's doubles, this discipline is actually stronger, so not much to say. And mixed doubles. With the loss of Yuta Watanabe and Arisa Higashino, Japan are struggling. In 2023, they used Kyoei Yamashita and Naru Shinoya, but Shinoya has also since retired. Midorikawa and Saito did reach the final of the recent Asia Championships, and I do really like this pair. But still, in comparison to the 2023 team, the mix just isn't as strong. What compounds all of this is that since 2023, Japan have also lost their head coach, Park Ju-bong, a hugely influential person on the Japanese team. He was the guy who played a huge role in making them a Sudirman Cup medaling team in the first place. Oh, and I can't forget the fact that the financial situation within Japan is far from ideal and has caused plenty of change and disturbance to how things are run. So yeah, as far as Japan is concerned, I think with all these factors, it will be a huge win for them if they are able to medal. If you are a Japanese fan though, it isn't all doom and gloom. They could do what they did in 2023, as let's not forget in the group stages they lost 5-0 to Korea, only to almost beat China in the semis. But regardless, for me, Japan will be happy with a medal this time. Can anyone stop China? That is the ultimate question heading into this year's Sudirman Cup. As I said in my introduction, China have been the dominant force in this competition, winning 13 times from 18 editions played, and they are heading into the 19th edition as the top seeds and favourites. So, who can stop them? Well, based on what almost happened in 2023, where Japan held 4 match points in the men's doubles, I'd say there are a few teams actually capable of doing it. Although in most people's minds, I think there is just one, and that team is Korea. I will come back to Korea in a minute. I want to first talk about China. China are the favourites because, like I've said so many times before, they have world-class players in every single discipline. In fact, this is the world rankings of their potential team lineup. Men's singles 1, women's singles 2, men's doubles 3, women's doubles 1, mixed doubles 1. That's a pretty strong team. And not only that, but they have backup players who are also highly ranked and maybe more importantly, experienced. The Chinese team is filled with players who have been there and done that, and when it comes to winning these big events where the pressure is huge, experience can really help. And one more thing that will help China, if they need any more help than it is, they will have the home court advantage. China are difficult to beat at the best of times, but where they are really difficult to beat is on home soil. In fact, China has never lost a Sudirman Cup match on home soil before. However, whilst all of this makes this China team seem unstoppable, that isn't actually the case. They do have some areas which can be exposed. Whilst I did say this team has experience, their women's events might possibly be headed by players who will be making their Sudirman Cup debut. Wang Ziyi in the women's singles and Lu Shengshu and Tan Ning in the women's doubles. Now, all of these players have won plenty of individual tournaments and are highly ranked for a good reason. But a team tournament is slightly different, and there's a possibility that if a certain situation arises where either of these players has to deliver a crucial point, well, that pressure could be too much. To alleviate this somewhat, China does have players in reserve with plenty of experience, especially in the women's singles where the return of former Olympic champion Chen Yufei and her recent win at the Asia Championships may ease the coach's slight tension. And talking about pressure to deliver, the mixed doubles to me is an interesting one within the Chinese team. China is, and has been for the past 2 decades, the most dominant country in mixed doubles, and even though they recently split up their 2 top-ranked pairs, at this year's All England it was still a China 1-2-3. However, at the Asia Championships just gone, it was only the mixed doubles where China didn't have a player or pair in the final. Now, whilst I feel this could be seen as just an anomaly, something not to even consider, I do think that result might worry the Chinese coaches a bit. Yes, they did play in their old partnerships, but to me what it would show to the Chinese coaches is that there are chances for other countries to win a point in this discipline. To be fair, this was even kind of true in 2023, as when Japan almost beat China it was all started by Japan winning the mixed doubles. The difference between then and now though, and why I feel it leaves China more exposed this year, is that in 2023 China did have Zheng Siwei and Wang Yichong, a pair who rarely ever lost. They've since retired, and so China has no true guarantee to rest on in the mixed doubles. So whilst China will still be very difficult to beat in the mixed doubles, the chances for other teams to beat them in it are far higher than they have been in a number of years. And couple this with the possible pressure on the new female players, and the fact in their men's doubles squad their top pair Wang Chan and Liang Weikeng has been struggling. Their second pair He Jiting and Reng Shangyu won't be there as they are being investigated for match fixing. And their third pair Chen and Liu have been doing well, but they are vastly inexperienced. Well, all of this does open up possibilities. And it's those possibilities that have got me thinking a lot since deciding to do this video. As I thought about the Sudirman Cup more, the more I get this certain feeling. If I had to liken this feeling, then I'd say this 2025 China team is in a similar position to the 2017 China team, a team who lost unexpectedly in the final to Korea. The 2017 China team also had a women's side that was young and very talented, but lacked Sudirman Cup experience, as well as the top 2 ranked mixed pairs, but 2 pairs with uncertainty of their future. That team also had plenty of experience mixed within it, yet they were defeated. So could this happen again? And to the same team perhaps? Well, the short answer, as you could predict, is yes. Korea is in many people's opinion the team that can stop China from winning, even though they aren't the second seeded team. But that might actually be because Korea have undergone a number of changes in their doubles lineups, so the rankings in those events aren't a true reflection of their team's strength. Korea hasn't released their full squad yet, but I think most people can guess who will make the trip to China, and based on that, it is a strong team. They have the out-and-out world number 1 in the women's singles, the world and Olympic champion An Se-young. In the men's doubles, they have Seo Sun-jae and Kim Won-ho, a newly reunited pair who have taken the doubles discipline by storm, Asia Championship aside, in 2025 so far. In the women's doubles, the new version of Kim and Kong are getting stronger and stronger, and although not as consistent as they once were, they also have Baek Ha-na and Lee So-hee. For the mixed doubles, well, this is an interesting one, as only recently have we seen 2 new Korean pairs emerge on the international scene, Lee Jong-min and Cha Yu-jung and Ki Dong-ju and Jung Na-yeon. And whilst both of these pairs are good and have plenty of promise, especially Jong-min and Yu-jung, I can easily foresee that when it comes to crunch time, Korea will field a former and more established pair, with my top pick being the current world champions Seo Sun-jae and Cha Yu-jung. They haven't played together since the Olympics last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't put in some practice matches behind closed doors for this Sudirman Cup. I think we could see this pair emerge in the Korean team when we get to the latter stages. Really, the only true weakness of this Korean team is their men's singles, but that has been a weakness ever since they last won the Sudirman Cup in 2017, and even with that weakness have still been able to perform well, reaching the final in 2023. Now, as for a China vs Korea showdown, whilst I do feel Korea stand a good chance of winning, it would be difficult. Whilst most would say both teams will split the singles events, China are really the only nation with players who can probably steal a win in the women's singles against Korea. This happened in the 2023 final when Chen Yufei beat An Se-young, and in 2025 it seems Wang Ziyi is one of only a couple of players who can challenge An Se-young. Regardless of who China pick, there will be a lot of pressure on An Se-young to deliver. In the remaining disciplines, I'd give the edge to Korea in the men's doubles, but the women's doubles favours China. And then the mixed doubles, well, you know my thoughts on that. For me, if it is a Korea vs China showdown, the order of play might be quite important. Usually Sudirman Cup ties start with the mixed doubles. It will definitely be that way if Seo Sun-jae doubles up. So if it does, then who Korea picks and how the Chinese handle the situation could really set the tone. Okay, I do think that is as far as I'd like to go with the China vs Korea situation. Not only because there are endless scenarios we could talk about, but also because Korea isn't the only team who I think could beat China. In fact, right at the start of this video, I did say China will definitely top their group. But as I've further written this script and really thought about it, I must say that isn't even a guarantee, as Thailand could actually beat them with just 2 key players, Kunluvitit-san and Dichapon Pruvanukroh. I won't go into it more than that, because I feel me just making this point leads to a nice way of wrapping up this video and my preview of the upcoming Sudirman Cup. To me, this 2025 Sudirman Cup is actually pretty open, one of the most open I can recall for a few years. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One is that in the past 2 years, the men's events have become incredibly open, not just in terms of how many players or pairs can win tournaments, including the majors, but a diversity of countries too. Pretty much all the top teams had the men's events strongly covered, and all of them could beat each other on any given day. With that in mind, feasibly any team could get a 2-0 lead in any match, requiring just one more for victory. And another reason is the mixed doubles discipline has gone through such huge changes, as too has the women's doubles to some extent actually. But sticking with mixed, at the beginning of 2025, I believe almost 2/3 of the top 32 mixed pairs were no longer playing together, and I think that has left the discipline quite open. Yes, there are the stronger pairs, just like the men's events, and China is still the top nation, but still I do feel there are more chances for a number of teams to win this point. To sum up what I'm trying to say, I feel there are a lot more matches that are closer to 50-50 now than in 2023. So, can anyone stop China? Yes, I think there are a few teams capable of that. Japan showed it could almost be done in 2023, and whilst I feel a team like Japan isn't as strong in 2025 as 2023, I think, as you can probably tell by what I've said so far, that a number of teams are in the same boat, China included. This 2025 Sudirman Cup, I believe, is up for grabs, and honestly I am so excited to see it unfold. I'll finish this video by simply asking, what do you think? Who do you think will win the 2025 Sudirman Cup?